Good evening. And welcome to a quiet journey into one of Appalachia's oldest and most mysterious legends. Tonight, we will slowly explore the story of Dead Man's Hole, a dark, hidden chasm tucked away in the rolling hills of the American mountains, a place whispered about for generations. As you settle in, let your body sink gently into the bed. Let your eyes close softly. And allow the gentle rhythms of the past to guide you. We will wander through misty forests, echoing with the secrets of history, and listen to stories that have lingered in silence for decades. So, take a deep, slow breath. And drift calmly into the quiet mystery of tonight's tale, the legend of Dead Man's Hole. The Appalachian Mountains stretch like a quiet, rolling ocean of green across the eastern United States. Their peaks and valleys are soft, gentle, and timeless. Tonight, we begin our story in a small corner of these mountains, in a place where the trees whisper slowly with the wind, and the fog settles low like a delicate blanket over the hills. This is the kind of landscape that feels as though it has always been here, and will remain, calm and steady, long after we are gone. It is here that the story of Dead Man's Hole begins, a story told quietly, in hushed tones, by those who live in these mountains and respect the secrets they hold. Dead Man's Hole is not a name one would easily forget, though it is not marked on many maps. It is a deep chasm, hidden among dense forests and steep, rocky slopes, where the sunlight only reaches in soft, scattered beams. The locals speak of it with a mixture of curiosity and caution, for it is a place that seems to hold echoes of old times. Some say it is haunted. Others believe it is simply a deep, quiet pit carved by nature long ago, a remnant of an ancient world that we no longer see. And yet, no one can truly deny that something about the hole feels different, still, mysterious, and patient, as though it waits quietly for someone to notice it. Long ago, before the hills were crisscrossed with modern roads and towns, the area around Dead Man's Hole was even wilder than it is now. Travelers spoke of thick forests where the trees grew tall and close, their leaves forming a green roof above. Streams trickled down the hillsides, their water clear and cool, reflecting the dappled sunlight like tiny mirrors. And in the quiet corners of these forests, deer and foxes moved silently, almost like shadows, while birds sang soft, occasional notes that floated lazily in the air. It was in this world that the earliest stories of Dead Man's Hole began. People in nearby villages would tell their children to be careful when exploring the woods, warning them of a deep, dark pit hidden among the trees. They would say that travelers who wandered too close sometimes disappeared. Or that at night, one might hear strange sounds coming from the hole, whispers, groans, or even the faint echo of someone calling for help. These stories were passed down slowly, with each generation adding small details, each telling growing a little more mysterious than the last. One of the earliest known tales tells of a lone hunter named Eli, who lived in a small cabin not far from the hole. Eli was quiet and thoughtful, a man who preferred the company of the mountains to that of other people. One misty morning, he set out into the forest with his dog, a gentle old hound named Sam. They were looking for deer tracks, or perhaps just wandering, as Eli often did, to enjoy the stillness of the hills. The fog was thick that day, softening the outlines of the trees and making the forest seem like a world suspended between earth and sky. As Eli moved carefully along a narrow path, he noticed a strange, sudden drop in the landscape. The ground seemed to vanish beneath him, replaced by shadow and the faint echo of empty air. He had stumbled upon Dead Man's Hole, though he did not yet know it by that name. Peering over the edge, Eli saw the pit stretching down into darkness, its walls jagged and damp, covered with moss and creeping vines. A cold breeze rose from the chasm, carrying with it the smell of earth and water and something he could not quite name. Eli shivered, not entirely from the chill. There was a quiet there, a stillness that felt ancient, as though the hole had been waiting for centuries in silence. Curious but careful, Eli sat down on a nearby rock, letting Sam sniff cautiously at the edge of the pit. He noticed small bones, not large, but scattered like forgotten fragments. The sight made him uneasy, and he pulled back, remembering the stories he had heard as a child. They said the hole was cursed, that it had claimed lives before, and would claim more if one lingered too long. Eli felt a shiver pass over his shoulders. He did not know if the stories were true, but something about the silence and shadow of the hole made him respect the warning, as he watched. The fog thickened, curling around the trees like soft smoke. Shadows moved in strange patterns on the edges of his vision, though he knew it was only the forest playing tricks. Still, there was a sense that the hole itself was alive in some way, quiet but watching, patient, as though it had seen every traveler who had ever come near. Eli did not stay long. He stood carefully, gathered Sam, and returned home, carrying with him a sense of awe and unease that he could not shake. Over the years, more travelers would speak of Dead Man's Hole. Some said they had heard cries from within the pit, though when they approached, the sounds would vanish. Others told of strange lights at night, flickering like lanterns or distant stars, hovering above the hole before disappearing. The stories varied, and each person added their own detail, but all agreed on one thing: the hole was deep, mysterious, and not a place for casual wandering. Historians who later visited the area noted that the pit was likely a natural formation, created by centuries of water and erosion. They called it a sinkhole, a common feature in the limestone-rich hills of Appalachia. But to the people who lived nearby, this explanation never fully captured the feeling of the place. They knew that some mysteries were not meant to be solved, that some shadows were best left alone, and so, Dead Man's Hole remained, quietly waiting among the hills. Its story grew with the people who told it, drifting through generations like a soft, persistent wind. Some nights, the hole seemed almost to hum, a low vibration that could be felt rather than heard. Others, it was simply a pit, silent and still, holding the weight of centuries in its shadow. Tonight, as we begin our journey, we will slowly step closer to the hole. Not to fear it, but to observe it gently, as though it were a quiet companion in the woods. We will listen to the stories it has inspired, the legends whispered by those who once lived near it, and the echoes that linger still in the Appalachian hills. The tale of Dead Man's Hole is not one of sudden fright or loud danger. It is a story of patience, of shadow and stillness, and of the subtle ways in which history and mystery can intertwine. So, as you settle deeper into your bed, allow your mind to drift with the forest around you. Imagine the soft rustle of leaves, the distant call of an owl, the mist curling around the trees like quiet smoke. Picture the deep pit waiting below, calm and patient, holding its secrets gently, as if inviting you to simply notice it. And know that, like Eli and the generations who came before, you are part of a long line of wanderers who have approached the edge, curious, respectful, and quietly entranced by the beauty of mystery itself. The story has only begun. And in the chapters to come, we will follow the paths of those who dared to explore, those who whispered about the hole by candlelight, and the echoes of voices that may still linger in its shadows. For now, allow yourself to drift, to relax, and to step quietly into the soft, green world of the Appalachian Hills. Where Dead Man's Hole waits patiently, silent and eternal. As the sun begins its slow descent behind the Appalachian ridges, the forest takes on a deeper, richer shade of green. Shadows stretch across the hills, soft and gentle, moving with the curves of the land. The air grows cooler, filled with the scent of damp earth, pine needles, and the faint sweetness of wildflowers that cling to the edges of the forest floor. In these moments, the mountains seem to breathe slowly, and every leaf and stone feels as though it carries a story. Dead Man's Hole, hidden within this quiet world, is even more mysterious in the dimming light. The pit itself is not easy to see unless one knows the way. Mossy rocks and thick underbrush conceal the edges, making the hole appear almost like a natural depression in the land. Yet those who know the forest understand that there is something different about this place. The trees around the hole grow taller, straighter, as though shielding it from prying eyes. The wind seems to whisper more softly here, carrying sounds from far away, the distant rush of a stream, the subtle crack of a falling branch, the faint echo of footsteps that might or might not be there. Locals often tell of small, almost imperceptible signs that the hole is near. A sudden drop in temperature, even on a warm summer day. A hush that falls over the forest, muting birdsong and the rustle of small animals. And sometimes, a faint smell of damp, old earth rises from the ground, carrying with it the sense of a place untouched by human hands for centuries. It is in these moments that the stories of Dead Man's Hole feel most alive, as though the pit itself remembers the past, quietly observing those who venture close. One tale speaks of a family who lived on the outskirts of the hills many decades ago. The parents had 2 children, a boy and a girl, who were curious and adventurous in the gentle way that children often are. The family's cabin sat near the edge of the forest, far enough from the pit to be safe, yet close enough that the children could hear the faint rustle of leaves and the distant, almost musical calls of the hills. The boy, named Thomas, often wandered along the forest trails with his sister, Mary. On a warm afternoon in late summer, when the sun hung lazily in the sky and the air smelled faintly of honeysuckle, they ventured farther than usual. Thomas had heard whispers from older children in the village about Dead Man's Hole. Some spoke of strange sounds at night, others of small glowing lights, flickering like tiny stars above the pit. Mary, ever cautious, hesitated at first, but Thomas's gentle insistence and the thrill of curiosity led them deeper into the forest. The children walked slowly, listening to the rhythm of their own footsteps mingling with the soft whisper of the wind through the pine needles. The forest seemed alive with quiet energy, and as they moved closer to the hidden pit, a subtle hush settled over the trees. Even the birds seemed to pause, their songs trailing off into silence. And then, without warning, they saw it. The edge of Dead Man's Hole appeared before them, framed by tall oaks and creeping ivy. The pit was larger than they had imagined, a dark, yawning shadow in the forest floor. The walls were jagged, streaked with moss and the faint, glistening traces of water that had seeped from the rocks over countless years. The air above the pit was cooler, filled with a damp, earthy scent that made the children shiver slightly. And then, just as Thomas leaned forward to peer into the darkness, a small, faint sound drifted upward, a whisper of movement, as though the pit itself were breathing. Mary grabbed her brother's hand. "Thomas. Maybe we shouldn't be here," she said softly, her voice trembling just enough to match the eerie calm of the forest. But Thomas, captivated by the strange beauty of the place, only nodded slowly. He could feel the pull of history in the pit, a quiet reminder that this chasm had been here long before they were born. It was patient, unhurried, and somehow wise, as though it had seen everything that had passed through these hills. The children did not linger long. They circled the pit cautiously, tracing its edges with their eyes. Thomas noticed small rocks scattered near the opening, some shaped like the remnants of tools, others smooth and round from years of erosion. Mary, more sensitive to the mood of the forest, felt the weight of silence pressing gently against her ears. When they finally turned to leave, the forest seemed to breathe with them, releasing a soft sigh as the sunlight dipped lower and shadows deepened. Stories like Thomas and Mary's are common in the Appalachian region. Travelers often speak of encounters with Dead Man's Hole that are quiet and subtle, rather than frightening or dramatic. Some hear whispers carried on the wind, gentle enough to make one pause and wonder. Others see the flicker of light across the forest floor, small and fleeting, disappearing before it can be fully understood. And many simply feel the presence of the pit itself, a calm, almost solemn awareness that draws the mind inward, toward reflection and curiosity. Local historians have suggested that the pit may have been used long ago, perhaps by early settlers or Native American tribes, as a natural landmark. Some speculate it might have served as a place of caution, a boundary, or even a quiet ceremonial site. While no written records confirm these theories, the stories passed down through families lend weight to the idea that Dead Man's Hole has always held a kind of quiet significance. Even today, hikers and explorers who wander the Appalachian trails often speak of stumbling across the pit unexpectedly. They describe the same feelings that Thomas and Mary experienced, a mixture of awe and subtle unease, tempered by the soft beauty of the surrounding forest. And as the sun sets completely, leaving only a gentle twilight, the pit seems to settle back into itself, patient and still, waiting quietly for the next visitor to notice it. So, as you lie in your bed, imagine the gentle rustle of leaves overhead, the soft, distant call of an owl, and the quiet shadows of the forest folding around Dead Man's Hole. Picture Thomas and Mary walking slowly along the paths, curious and respectful, and feel the calm, patient presence of the pit itself. Let your mind drift through the forest, past moss-covered rocks and soft streams, toward the edge of the chasm, where history and mystery intertwine. There is no rush here. The hole is patient. The forest is patient. And tonight, as we listen to the whispers among the pines, we are invited to be patient as well, to observe, to wonder, and to relax into the gentle rhythm of the Appalachian hills. For Dead Man's Hole is not a place of fear, but of quiet reflection, a reminder that some mysteries are best approached slowly, with gentle curiosity, and a calm, steady heart. And as we prepare to move further into the story surrounding the hole, let us carry with us the feeling of that soft, still forest, the hush of pine needles underfoot, the faint scent of earth and water, and the gentle echo of whispers that drift from the depths of the chasm. The journey is only beginning, and the Appalachian hills are ready to share their quiet, enduring secrets, one soft step at a time. Long before roads and towns carved their way through the Appalachian hills, the area around Dead Man's Hole was home to the quiet persistence of nature and a handful of hardy settlers. Life in these mountains was simple, slow, and demanding. Families carved small clearings from the thick forest, planted crops in the thin soil, and built cabins from the surrounding timber. The rhythm of daily life was dictated by the sun and the seasons, rising with the light, working with careful hands, and resting when the day grew dim. The settlers were people of patience and quiet resilience, aware of the forest's moods and the slow pulse of the hills. They relied on the land for food, water, and wood. They listened to the streams, watched the sky for changing weather, and respected the forest as an elder of sorts, full of both life and hidden mysteries. Among these hidden mysteries was Dead Man's Hole, a place spoken of in soft, careful tones, as though the hills themselves might hear. Stories tell of a settler named Jonathan Hale, who arrived in the area with his family in the early 1800s. Jonathan was a man of quiet habits, a farmer who understood the rhythm of planting, tending, and harvesting. His wife, Margaret, shared his appreciation for the calm of the mountains, and together they built a modest cabin on a gentle slope overlooking the forest. Life was peaceful, though not without its small hardships. And the couple often explored the surrounding hills, noting the curious shapes of the land, the unusual rocks, and the deep hollows hidden among the trees. Jonathan had heard whispers from neighbors about a deep chasm in the forest, a place they called Dead Man's Hole. Some claimed it had claimed lives, though no one could say for certain how or when. Others told of faint lights at night or strange sounds drifting from the pit. Jonathan, practical as he was, considered these stories with mild curiosity. He had no desire to test the truth of them, yet he could not deny a subtle fascination whenever he thought of the hole. One crisp autumn day, Jonathan decided to explore the edge of the forest. Accompanied by his young son, Samuel. The air was cool and rich with the scent of fallen leaves, and the sunlight, filtering through the trees, created gentle patterns on the forest floor. They walked slowly, listening to the soft crunch of leaves underfoot, letting the forest guide their path. Jonathan kept a steady eye on Samuel, aware that the hills held hidden dips and roots that could easily trip a small child. After some time, they came upon a slope that seemed to vanish abruptly into shadow. Jonathan paused, recognizing the familiar description of Dead Man's Hole. The pit yawned before them, its depths hidden in darkness, the walls streaked with moss and damp stone. A faint, cool wind rose from the chasm, carrying with it the earthy scent of soil and water. Samuel, wide-eyed, clutched his father's hand. He could feel the hush that seemed to settle over the trees, a silence that was neither threatening nor comforting, but simply patient. Jonathan knelt to examine the edge, noticing small fragments of bone and stone scattered near the opening. They were old, worn smooth by time and weather, yet they hinted at the stories he had heard. Some of the older neighbors whispered that these were remnants of travelers who had disappeared, or perhaps markers left by early settlers as warnings to those who approached too closely. Jonathan did not know what to believe. But he felt a deep respect for the hole, a recognition that it was older than any of them and held its secrets carefully. He and Samuel lingered only briefly. Jonathan encouraged his son to observe quietly, to notice the patterns of light and shadow, the stillness of the forest, and the depth of the pit. There was a strange calm in the air, as though the forest itself was waiting, observing their cautious presence. When they finally turned to leave, Jonathan looked back once, feeling the pull of the hole, a quiet reminder of the mystery that had been part of these mountains long before his family arrived. Over the years, other settlers shared similar stories. Some spoke of livestock that went missing near the edge of the pit, though none could explain why. Others described faint, eerie lights that appeared above the hole on foggy nights, small and flickering like fireflies, yet somehow deliberate in their movement. Children often imagined the pit as a gateway to another world, a place where the forest and sky met in shadow and mist. And while adults rarely ventured close, the stories persisted, passed down in whispers by firelight during long winter evenings. It was during these quiet evenings that Dead Man's Hole became woven into the cultural memory of the mountains. Families would gather in their cabins, the warmth of the hearth surrounding them, and share stories of strange occurrences near the pit. Some tales were frightening in small, gentle ways: a fleeting shadow that moved across the forest floor, a soft moan rising from the depths, or the sensation of being observed by unseen eyes. Others were more mysterious than fearful: the unexplained disappearance of a tool, a sudden shift in the wind, or the flicker of light that seemed almost to beckon from the darkness. The settlers learned to live with the hole as a part of the landscape, an ancient, silent companion. They did not mock it, nor did they fully understand it. Instead, they respected it, allowing it to hold its quiet dominion among the trees and hills. The pit became a subtle teacher, reminding them that not all mysteries are meant to be solved and that some shadows are best approached with gentle curiosity rather than bold exploration. Children were often drawn to Dead Man's Hole, as children tend to be drawn to the unknown. They would sneak closer than they should, peeking over the edge to see the depths, imagining stories of hidden treasure, lost travelers, or secret worlds beneath the forest floor. Parents would call them back gently, reminding them to respect the land and its secrets, and the children would retreat, carrying with them a sense of wonder and the soft thrill of curiosity. Even today, the stories from those early settlers echo in the hills. Hikers and explorers who wander near Dead Man's Hole often report the same sense of calm unease, a mixture of curiosity and reverence for the pit. Some hear faint whispers, carried by the wind through the trees. Others glimpse shadows that move at the edge of their vision, disappearing when looked at directly. And many feel the pull of history, a patient reminder that the hills have seen countless generations pass, yet remain unchanged in their quiet mystery. As you drift deeper into this story, imagine walking alongside Jonathan and Samuel, feeling the soft crunch of leaves beneath your feet, and noticing the subtle changes in temperature and light as you approach the edge of the pit. Picture the trees standing tall around you, the forest humming with quiet life, and the chasm lying in still, patient shadow. Allow your mind to rest in the gentle rhythm of the forest and the slow, deliberate pace of the settlers' lives. Dead Man's Hole is patient. The forest is patient. And in this patience, there is a kind of calm, a gentle rhythm that encourages observation over action, curiosity over fear, and quiet reflection over hurried understanding. Tonight, as you lie in your bed, you can feel the hush of the Appalachian hills surrounding you, carrying the echoes of settlers long gone, the whispers of children at play, and the soft, enduring presence of a mysterious hole in the earth. The story is unfolding slowly, patiently, like the forest itself. And as we continue, we will follow the patterns of the people who lived near the hole, the mysteries they observed, and the legends that grew with each passing generation. For now, let yourself rest in the quiet of the hills, listening to the whispers among the trees, and imagining the patient shadow of Dead Man's Hole stretching beneath the forest canopy, calm and eternal. As the Appalachian hills stretch quietly into the distance, the forest seems almost to breathe with its own slow, steady rhythm. The rustle of leaves, the soft trickle of hidden streams, and the distant call of an owl create a gentle, comforting music. And within this quiet world, Dead Man's Hole holds its shadowed presence, patient and unchanging, waiting silently through the seasons. Though many settlers respected the pit and the stories surrounding it, there were always those whose curiosity was stronger than their caution. Travelers passing through the hills sometimes wandered too close, drawn by the whispers of neighbors or the thrill of discovery. Over time, the forest became known not only for its beauty and stillness, but for a series of mysterious disappearances that added an extra layer of quiet intrigue to Dead Man's Hole. One of the earliest recorded incidents involved a man named Caleb Moore, a traveling woodsman who passed through the region in the late 1800s. Caleb was tall, lean, and accustomed to long days in the forest. He had heard the stories of the pit from local families and the whispers of children, but he did not believe in anything supernatural. He trusted only what he could see and touch. One morning, as a gentle mist hung over the hills and the sunlight barely reached the forest floor, Caleb set out to explore the area near Dead Man's Hole. His steps were careful and deliberate, his boots sinking slightly into the soft earth with each movement. The forest around him was alive with subtle sounds, the low hum of insects, the distant trickle of a brook, and the soft sighing of the wind through the pine needles. It was a day like any other in the mountains, calm and serene, and yet, in the quiet, the pit waited. Caleb approached the edge of Dead Man's Hole with a mixture of caution and curiosity. The opening stretched wide and deep, its darkness swallowing the sunlight that fell across the surrounding rocks. A chill breeze rose from the pit, carrying the scent of damp earth and something older, something that seemed almost alive. Caleb peered over the edge, leaning carefully to see the depths. For a moment, the forest was utterly silent, as if it were holding its breath. Then, without warning, Caleb noticed a faint shimmer in the darkness below. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, like the reflection of moonlight on water, though it was still daylight. He squinted, trying to make sense of it, and in that brief distraction, his footing shifted. A small, loose rock gave way beneath his boot, and Caleb stumbled. His hands found the edge of a root, grabbing hold with a sudden rush of adrenaline, but in that moment, a sense of unease settled over him, a feeling that the pit was not simply a hole in the earth, but a presence, watching and patient. Caleb managed to steady himself, breathing deeply and letting the forest's calm wash over him. He stepped back slowly, glancing one last time into the darkness. Though he left the pit unharmed that day, he could not shake the strange feeling that lingered, an awareness that some things in the forest were older and wiser than any traveler, and that curiosity, even when cautious, could carry unexpected weight. Other disappearances were less easily explained. Families reported small items vanishing near the pit, tools, livestock, even the occasional hiker who had strayed too close. The items often appeared days or weeks later, sometimes in places that made little sense, scattered among rocks or hanging from low branches. Some locals whispered that the pit had a way of moving things, quietly, slowly, as if it were sorting its own collection of curiosities. Children, in particular, were drawn to the edges of the pit. They imagined hidden worlds beneath the forest floor, filled with treasure or secret creatures. One young girl, named Lillian, once wandered a little too far during a summer afternoon. Her parents heard her calling softly and ran toward her voice, only to find her standing at the edge of Dead Man's Hole, eyes wide with awe and curiosity. She spoke of seeing faint shapes moving in the darkness, like shadows gliding silently along the walls. Though she had not fallen, the sight haunted her dreams for months afterward. A gentle reminder of the pit's quiet, mysterious pull, the stories grew with time, accumulating small, unexplained details that added depth to the legend. On foggy nights, travelers reported hearing soft cries, barely audible above the wind. Others spoke of flickering lights, dancing like lanterns or fireflies, yet moving in patterns that seemed deliberate, almost thoughtful. Some claimed to see shadowy figures near the edge, standing perfectly still, only to vanish when approached. The forest itself seemed to cooperate with the pit, amplifying its quiet mysteries with every rustle of leaves and shift of mist. historians who later documented these tales noted that while most disappearances and strange events could be explained by the natural hazards of the forest, steep slopes, hidden crevices, or wildlife, there was a subtle, persistent quality that made Dead Man's Hole different from any other pit or sinkhole in the region. Locals insisted that the hole had a way of drawing attention to itself, a quiet power that was felt rather than understood. Whether real or imagined, it left an impression on everyone who approached it. Even today, hikers report a strange calm when near the pit, as though the forest itself is guiding them carefully. Some feel an inexplicable chill, others a gentle pull toward the shadows, a sensation that encourages reflection rather than fear. And while most visitors leave with nothing more than a quiet memory, there are those who swear they have glimpsed shapes moving below. Faint lights flickering across the walls, or heard whispers that drifted softly through the trees. In the Appalachian Hills, Dead Man's Hole is patient. It does not demand attention, nor does it rush the curious traveler. It waits, quietly, allowing time to pass slowly, so that anyone who approaches may notice the subtle signs, the cool breeze rising from the depths, the hush of the forest, the faint echo of movement below. The pit has watched generations of settlers, hikers, and children come and go, always observing, always still. Tonight, as you lie in your bed, imagine walking slowly toward the pit, feeling the soft crunch of leaves underfoot, the gentle rise and fall of your own breath in rhythm with the forest. Picture Caleb Moore pausing at the edge, feeling the subtle pull of the shadows. See Lillian, wide-eyed and curious, marveling at the faint shapes that move in the darkness. And let the quiet presence of the pit settle around you, a calm, steady reminder of patience and mystery, of things that exist quietly in the world even when we are not watching. Dead Man's Hole is a story of subtle awe, of gentle curiosity, and of the quiet ways in which mystery can touch our lives. It asks nothing, yet inspires reflection. It holds its secrets carefully, revealing only glimpses to those willing to approach slowly and respectfully. And as you drift further into sleep, let yourself feel the soft hush of the forest, the gentle pull of the hills, and the patient shadow of Dead Man's Hole resting quietly in the Appalachian Mountains, eternal and calm. As twilight settles over the Appalachian Hills, the sky deepens into gentle shades of lavender and gray. The forest exhales softly, the wind rustling through the pine needles like a lullaby. This is the hour when stories are most alive, when shadows stretch long across the hills and the quiet of the forest invites reflection. It is at this time, generations ago, that families would gather in their cabins, the warmth of the hearth filling the room, and share stories of Dead Man's Hole. The legends surrounding the pit were passed down slowly, like a soft song carried from one generation to the next. They were not tales of loud fright or sudden terror. Instead, they were quiet, mysterious, and deliberate, meant to stir curiosity and gentle awe rather than fear. Around flickering flames, children would lean close to hear of shadowy figures, strange lights, and whispers that drifted from the depths of the pit. These stories were often accompanied by the soft crackle of firewood and the scent of wood smoke, adding a cozy rhythm to the unfolding mystery. One popular tale told of a wandering traveler named Amos. He was said to have been a kind, curious man who loved the quiet of the mountains. One evening, drawn by the faint glow of twilight and the whisper of the trees, he wandered too close to Dead Man's Hole. The story goes that he glimpsed strange, flickering lights deep within the chasm, like tiny lanterns moving gracefully along the walls. He called out softly, though no one answered, and for hours, he remained at the edge, mesmerized by the subtle dance of illumination and shadow. When he returned to his cabin that night, Amos spoke quietly to his neighbors of what he had seen, and the story became a gentle warning. The pit was not to be mocked or approached without care. Other legends spoke of voices carried by the wind. On foggy nights, the air above Dead Man's Hole could become heavy and still, and those who stood near the edge sometimes heard whispers, soft as the rustling of leaves. The voices were faint, unintelligible, yet somehow familiar, as if they belonged to people long gone, long forgotten, whose presence lingered quietly in the hills. Some settlers said these were the voices of those who had disappeared, offering gentle guidance or simply acknowledging the presence of the living in their silent world. Children, in particular, loved these stories. They would sit by the hearth, eyes wide, imagining the slow, patient movements of unseen figures in the shadows. They pictured tiny lights floating in the darkness, tracing invisible paths along the walls of the pit. They imagined the whispers of long-gone travelers drifting on the breeze, carrying advice, warnings, or gentle encouragement. And though they were sometimes scared, the fear was soft, mingled with fascination. A subtle shiver that added to the beauty of the tale. Many legends suggested that Dead Man's Hole was more than just a pit. Some believed it was a passage to another world, a thin place where the boundary between the living and the departed became delicate. Others thought the pit had a memory, a quiet awareness that recorded the actions of those who approached. It did not punish, nor did it intervene, but it seemed to notice, quietly observing, patient and unhurried. There was also the tale of a young couple, Samuel and Eliza, who once camped near the edge of the forest. They had heard of the pit, of course, and approached it with careful curiosity. As twilight deepened, they noticed a strange light flickering across the trees. Soft and steady, like the glow of a lantern moved by an unseen hand. The couple did not speak, but they watched silently as the light seemed to trace patterns, rising and falling gently, as though the pit itself were communicating in a slow, deliberate rhythm. When they finally left, the memory of the light lingered for years, a quiet reminder of the pit's gentle mystery. Over time, these stories became woven into the culture of the hills. Parents would tell their children to respect the pit, not as a threat, but as a teacher. The lessons were subtle: patience, observation, quiet curiosity. If one approached Dead Man's Hole with care and respect, the forest rewarded attention with gentle signs, small mysteries, and the thrill of wonder. If approached carelessly, the pit could be dangerous, reminding all who came near that some places are best understood slowly, over generations, rather than in haste. Settlers often recounted small, almost humorous incidents as well. Tools would vanish near the edge, only to reappear days later in curious places. Animals sometimes behaved oddly, pausing near the pit as if sensing something beyond human understanding. Even the wind seemed to have its own rhythm, rising and falling with subtle purpose. These small oddities were accepted as part of life in the mountains, and they added to the sense of calm fascination that enveloped Dead Man's Hole. The legends were not confined to spoken stories alone. Songs, poems, and quiet sketches sometimes depicted the pit, emphasizing its gentle mystery. Some settlers wrote simple verses describing the flickering lights, the shadows moving on the walls, or the hush of the forest around the chasm. Others drew the pit from memory, capturing its depth, the curve of its edges, and the moss-covered rocks that seemed to protect it from casual attention. These artistic expressions were gentle, thoughtful, and meditative, much like the forest itself. As the decades passed, the legends continued to evolve. Each new generation added details, small and subtle, enriching the tapestry of stories. Travelers who had never heard of Dead Man's Hole before discovered it through whispered tales, often returning with their own accounts of soft lights, strange sounds, or fleeting shadows. The pit became a shared memory among the Appalachian communities, a symbol of patient mystery and quiet reflection, and still, the pit remained unchanged. The forest grew, leaves fell and regrew, streams shifted slightly over time, but Dead Man's Hole kept its silent watch. It seemed to know that stories were its companions, that human curiosity was part of its long life, and that it did not need to reveal everything at once. Patience, observation, and quiet respect were the keys, and those who learned this slowly, with care, were rewarded with a gentle sense of awe and understanding. Tonight, as you listen, imagine sitting by a warm hearth in a small mountain cabin. Feel the heat of the fire, the faint smell of wood smoke drifting through the air. Picture children leaning close, eyes wide, listening to the soft stories of Dead Man's Hole. Imagine the flickering shadows dancing on the walls of the cabin, echoing the mysterious lights that sometimes appear above the pit. Allow yourself to feel the hush of the forest, the gentle rhythm of the hills, and the soft, patient presence of the pit itself. Dead Man's Hole is not a place of sudden fright. It is a place of gentle wonder, of soft shadows and quiet whispers, of curiosity and reflection. It teaches patience, observation, and respect for mysteries that have lasted generations. And as you drift further into sleep, let the legend settle around you like a soft blanket, carrying the calm, enduring whispers of the Appalachian hills and the patient shadow of Dead Man's Hole. As night begins to settle over the Appalachian hills, the forest takes on a deeper, more mysterious hue. Shadows stretch gently across the slopes, blending softly with the fading light. The air is cool and still, carrying the scent of damp earth, pine needles, and distant wildflowers. In this quiet, timeless space, Dead Man's Hole seems to come alive, not in a frightening way, but with a gentle, watchful presence that stirs curiosity and quiet wonder. For generations, travelers and settlers have spoken of the peculiar lights that sometimes appear near the pit. They are subtle, delicate, and often fleeting, flickering like tiny stars hovering above the darkness. These lights are rarely bright or overwhelming. Instead, they shimmer softly, as though the pit itself is breathing slowly and patiently. Some say the lights move with intention, tracing gentle arcs over the chasm, disappearing and reappearing in a rhythm that seems almost deliberate. One story tells of a man named Elias, a woodsman who spent long days tending the forest paths near Dead Man's Hole. Elias was familiar with the trails, with the soft whispers of the trees, and with the gentle songs of the streams. He had heard the tales of the flickering lights many times but had never seen them himself. One evening, while returning from a long day of work, he noticed a faint glow in the distance. It was small and unassuming, barely visible through the dense fog that clung to the forest floor. Curiosity drew Elias closer, though he approached slowly, respecting the quiet of the hills. As he neared the edge of the pit, the lights appeared more clearly, shimmering gently across the darkness below. They were soft and golden, moving with a slow, deliberate grace. Elias did not speak or call out, he simply watched, mesmerized by the delicate dance of illumination. The lights seemed to rise and fall like breathing, casting subtle shadows on the moss-covered walls of the pit. Some legends suggest that these lights are the spirits of those who disappeared near the hole long ago. Others believe they are natural phenomena, the reflection of the moon on water seeping from the pit, or the glint of minerals in the rocks. Whatever the cause, the effect is always the same, a quiet sense of awe, a gentle thrill of curiosity, and a calm awareness of the forest's patient presence. Children, in particular, were captivated by these stories. They would sit by the fire, imagining tiny lanterns moving slowly through the darkness, guiding the lost or signaling unseen mysteries. Some children claimed to have seen the lights themselves, describing them as playful, almost gentle, moving in patterns that seemed to invite observation without fear. Parents, speaking softly, would caution them to be careful, but they too marveled at the beauty of the tales. Another story tells of a young couple, Abigail and Thomas, who camped near the forest on a clear autumn night. As twilight deepened, they noticed faint glimmers rising above the pit. The lights hovered just above the edge, shifting slowly like a soft, living ribbon. Abigail held Thomas's hand, feeling a gentle shiver of awe as they watched silently. The lights moved with a grace that seemed deliberate, almost as if they were aware of the watchers. After a long moment, the couple turned away, leaving the pit behind, yet the memory of the lights lingered in their minds for many years, a quiet reminder of the pit's mysterious presence. Historians have tried to explain the phenomenon scientifically. Some suggest that the lights could be small ignited gases released from the earth, while others point to the reflection of moonlight on hidden water or minerals. Yet none of these explanations capture the subtle magic described by those who have witnessed the lights firsthand. For the locals, the lights are a gentle mystery, a quiet symbol of the forest's patience and the chasm's enduring presence. Even the forest seems to respond to the lights. The wind slows, rustling the trees softly, as if to avoid disturbing the delicate display. Small animals pause, listening, before resuming their gentle wanderings. The streams trickle quietly, reflecting the soft glimmer above, adding a faint shimmer to the scene. The entire landscape seems to hold its breath, allowing the lights to move gently. Unobserved and unhindered, like whispers of the past carried on the night air, sometimes, travelers report hearing faint sounds accompanying the lights, a soft sigh, a whisper, or the subtle echo of a footstep that does not belong to anyone. These sounds are gentle, almost imperceptible, and never startling. They add to the sense that Dead Man's Hole is not merely a pit in the earth, but a quiet, observing presence, aware of those who approach and willing to reveal its secrets in subtle ways. Over the years, the lights have inspired quiet creativity. Local artists and writers have captured them in sketches, poems, and soft, contemplative stories. The depictions are never vivid or bold, but gentle, reflective, and meditative, mirroring the calm, deliberate movement of the lights themselves. Even those who have never seen the pit in person feel the allure of the tales, drawn into the subtle rhythm of the forest and the patient shadow of the chasm. As the legends grew, the lights became a symbol of the pit's quiet influence over the hills. They remind all who witness them that the forest holds mysteries that do not demand answers, that patience and observation can bring wonder, and that some things are meant to be experienced slowly, without haste or fear. The lights are gentle guides, showing the rhythm of the hills and the enduring presence of a quiet, ancient chasm. Tonight, as you lie in your bed, imagine walking slowly through the misty forest, feeling the cool, soft air brush against your skin. Hear the faint rustle of leaves, the gentle gurgle of a distant stream, and the calm sigh of the wind. Picture the soft, golden lights flickering above the shadowed pit, rising and falling with a rhythm that feels almost like breathing. Allow your mind to drift gently, observing without judgment, listening without expectation, and feeling the quiet awe that has captivated travelers for generations. Dead Man's Hole, with its flickering lights, is not a place of sudden fright. It is a place of gentle wonder, patience, and quiet observation. It invites those who approach with respect to notice, to reflect, and to appreciate the subtle beauty of the hills and the forest around it. And as you drift further into sleep, let yourself carry the calm glow of the lights with you, the whispers of the forest, and the patient shadow of the pit resting quietly in the Appalachian hills, eternal and serene. The Appalachian night is gentle, even when it is mysterious. Darkness settles slowly over the hills, wrapping the trees and rocks in a soft, protective blanket. The forest exhales quietly, carrying the faint scent of pine, damp earth, and distant wildflowers. It is in this calm, hushed hour that the whispers of Dead Man's Hole are said to be heard most clearly. For generations, locals have spoken of sounds that drift softly from the pit. They are never loud or alarming, but subtle, soft breaths of wind that almost sound like words, gentle sighs, and faint footsteps that do not belong to anyone walking the forest trails. Many claim that if you listen closely, the whispers seem to follow a slow rhythm, almost like a conversation carried across time. Some have said it feels as though the pit itself is speaking, offering quiet guidance to those who pause and pay attention. One story tells of a hunter named Samuel, who traveled the hills during the early 1900s. Samuel was familiar with the forest, knowing every twist of the trail and every curve of the streams. One evening, he wandered near the edge of Dead Man's Hole, drawn by the soft rustle of leaves in the fading light. As he paused to rest, he heard faint whispers drifting upward from the chasm. They were soft, melodic, and almost comforting, a gentle hum of voices he could not fully understand. At first, Samuel assumed it was the wind or the forest playing tricks on his ears. But as the moments passed, the whispers grew more distinct, though still soft. They carried patterns, rising and falling in a rhythm that seemed deliberate. He felt a calm, meditative awareness settling over him, as though the pit were inviting him to pause, to notice, and to reflect. Samuel did not call out. He simply listened, letting the whispers wash over him like a gentle tide. Children often reported similar experiences. They would lean close to their parents by the hearth, describing faint voices that drifted across the forest floor, soft as the rustle of leaves. Some said the whispers sounded like names, gentle reminders of people long gone, while others spoke of soft advice or warnings. Always offered with calm patience rather than urgency. Parents would nod quietly, encouraging the children to respect the pit and its quiet messages, and the stories would pass down through generations, soft as the shadows in the hills. Some whisperers claimed the voices were those of travelers who had disappeared near the pit long ago. Others suggested that the sounds were echoes of the forest itself, a memory carried by the wind through the trees and over the mossy rocks. Whatever the source, the effect was always the same, a feeling of calm wonder, a quiet pause in the rhythm of life, and a sense that the forest and the pit were alive in a subtle, patient way. One tale tells of a young woman named Clara, who had recently moved with her family to a cabin near the forest. One autumn evening, as mist crept through the trees, Clara walked to the edge of the pit, alone but not afraid. She paused, listening to the faint, melodic whispers that drifted upward. They were soft, almost musical, rising and falling with the movement of the wind. Clara felt a gentle shiver of awe, realizing that the pit was not a threat, but a patient observer, offering quiet connection to the forest and the mysteries within. Over the years, the whispers of Dead Man's Hole inspired quiet reflection among travelers and settlers. People spoke of pauses in their walks, moments of contemplation, or subtle realizations that occurred while listening to the soft sounds. Some found comfort in the whispers, as though the pit understood the human heart and offered calm reassurance. Others simply felt a heightened awareness of the forest, noticing the small movements of animals, the rustle of leaves, or the gentle flow of streams, all woven together in a delicate, meditative harmony. It was not always human voices that the pit seemed to share. Occasionally, travelers spoke of faint, unfamiliar sounds, a soft rustling that could not be explained by the wind, a delicate tapping that seemed to echo from the shadows, or even the distant cry of an animal that vanished as quickly as it appeared. These sounds were subtle, gentle, and never startling, blending seamlessly with the rhythm of the forest. They added to the sense that Dead Man's Hole was alive in a quiet way, holding its mysteries with patience and care. Historians and curious explorers have speculated about the source of the whispers. Some suggest the sounds are natural echoes, carried by the shape of the pit and the surrounding forest. Others believe the whispers are the memories of the land itself, echoing events from decades or even centuries past. Whatever the explanation, the whispers remain a gentle, enduring part of the pit's legend, a quiet, meditative companion for anyone who chooses to pause and listen. The Appalachian forest, especially near Dead Man's Hole, encourages stillness. The trees, tall and patient, stand like quiet sentinels. The streams murmur softly, flowing gently over stones worn smooth by time. The wind carries faint messages from the hills and hollows, wrapping the forest in a calming rhythm. And at the center of it all, the pit waits, listening and observing with quiet awareness, offering its whispers to those who approach slowly and respectfully. Travelers often report that when they focus on the whispers, their minds begin to slow, their breathing becomes gentle and even, and a sense of deep calm washes over them. It is as though the forest itself is inviting them to rest, to reflect, and to let the mysteries of the hills unfold gently, without hurry. The whispers are not meant to frighten or alarm. They are meant to guide the curious toward observation, patience, and quiet reflection. Tonight, as you lie in your bed, imagine the hush of the forest around you. Hear the gentle whispers drifting through the trees, soft and melodic, carrying the calm of centuries past. Picture yourself standing near the edge of Dead Man's Hole, feeling the cool air brush against your skin, and listening to the subtle rhythm of voices rising from the depths. Let the sounds guide you into a meditative state, letting your mind drift gently with the slow pulse of the hills and the patient presence of the pit. The whispers of Dead Man's Hole are not a call to action, nor a warning to flee. They are a gentle reminder that some mysteries are meant to be observed quietly, experienced slowly, and carried gently into memory. They teach us patience, reflection, and the beauty of subtle wonder. And as you drift further into sleep, imagine the soft, melodic whispers surrounding you, the gentle rustle of leaves, and the calm, watchful presence of the pit resting quietly in the Appalachian hills, eternal, serene, and patiently waiting. Even in the quietest corners of the Appalachian hills, news of Dead Man's Hole traveled slowly but surely. Over the decades, travelers, explorers, and curious locals alike made their way toward the pit, drawn by whispers of its strange lights, gentle sounds, and quiet mysteries. Unlike the hurried visitors of towns or markets, those who approached the pit moved with careful curiosity, often sensing that this was a place to observe, not disturb. One such visitor was a man named Henry Whitlock, a naturalist who loved wandering through forests and studying the subtle rhythms of nature. He had heard stories of Dead Man's Hole while traveling through the hills and was intrigued by the tales of flickering lights and gentle whispers. Unlike others, Henry approached the pit with a notebook in quiet reverence, determined to record observations while keeping his presence unobtrusive. Henry's journey to the pit began on a misty morning in late summer. The forest was damp with dew, the air cool and sweet with the scent of pine and wildflowers. As he walked, he noticed subtle signs that the forest itself seemed aware of his passage. Birds paused mid-song, small animals watched quietly from the underbrush, and the wind whispered softly through the trees. It was a calm, patient environment, and Henry felt a gentle sense of anticipation as he neared the pit. When he first glimpsed Dead Man's Hole, the sheer depth and stillness of it took his breath away. The moss-covered edges rose slightly above the forest floor, creating a natural frame that seemed to protect the darkness within. The pit was wide and deep, stretching beyond the reach of his eyes, and a cool, subtle breeze rose from its depths. It carried the scent of damp earth, old stones, and a faint trace of something older, something that felt both timeless and patient. Henry knelt at the edge, noting the texture of the moss, the scattered rocks, and the slight shimmer of moisture along the walls of the pit. As he observed, he became aware of a faint rustling, a sound so soft it could have been mistaken for the wind. He paused, listening, and realized it was not random. The sound rose and fell with a gentle rhythm, almost like the exhale of a quiet, patient being. He felt a deep calm settle over him, as though the pit itself were acknowledging his careful presence. Over the following days, Henry visited the pit several times. Each time, he approached slowly, respecting the quiet rules of the forest and the patient mystery of the pit. He observed subtle shifts in light, faint echoes of movement, and the occasional flicker of glowing lights just above the chasm. Sometimes, the sounds of the forest would blend with whispers from below, creating a gentle, meditative atmosphere. Henry noted everything in his journal, careful not to disturb the delicate balance that seemed to exist around the pit. Many visitors before him had similar experiences. Families on walks through the hills would pause near the edge, observing the depth of the pit without daring to descend. Children, full of curiosity, would linger at a safe distance, imagining tiny creatures or hidden treasures within the darkness. Even those who did not see lights or hear whispers often felt a subtle pull, a quiet awareness that the pit was older, wiser, and infinitely patient. One story speaks of a small group of explorers, friends who camped near the edge of the forest one summer night. They had heard the legends but approached with gentle respect. As dusk fell, they noticed a soft, golden glow rising from the pit, flickering gently like lanterns moved by unseen hands. The explorers remained silent, observing the lights as they traced slow patterns across the forest floor. They did not call out or try to approach, they simply sat quietly, letting the lights guide their attention and reflection. The experience left them with a sense of calm wonder, and they spoke of it for years afterward, always in hushed, thoughtful tones. Even local hunters and woodsmen, familiar with every trail and tree, were not immune to the pit's gentle influence. Some claimed to have heard whispers rising softly from below, faint voices that seemed to echo memories of those who had once passed through the hills. Others noticed the subtle movement of shadows, shifting without a source, or the appearance of small lights that disappeared when approached. While these phenomena were never loud or alarming, they left a lasting impression, encouraging those who witnessed them to move with patience and quiet observation. The pit's visitors often spoke of its power to calm the mind. Long days of walking through the forest, observing its subtle details, and listening to its quiet whispers created a gentle rhythm. Thoughts slowed, breathing became steady, and a feeling of connection with the forest and its history settled in the heart. The pit did not demand attention, it offered reflection, curiosity, and the soothing presence of an ancient mystery. Another tale tells of a woman named Clara, who visited the pit with a group of friends during a late autumn afternoon. She had heard stories of lights and whispers, but had expected nothing more than shadows and wind. As she approached the edge, she noticed a delicate shimmer across the walls of the pit, subtle enough to seem like a trick of the light. Then, faint whispers drifted upward, melodic and soft, as if inviting her to pause and simply observe. Clara remained for a long while, listening to the forest and the whispers, feeling a gentle sense of awe and calm. When she finally left, she carried the memory of the pit quietly in her heart, a gentle companion for the nights ahead.